Hey guys, my guest tonight, author Sylvia Shults, will be on hand to talk about another visit to Peoria State Hospital and some scary Christmas stories. I'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thursday, 2 more days of the weekend. Got a quick announcement to make. Let me push my little buttons here. Got it. First try, everything good. Got a first announcement to make. Is tomorrow evening, being Friday, after the show, I will be live on TikTok, and hopefully some of you guys have a TikTok account. I will be live on TikTok, putting together a gingerbread house live on TikTok. So if you're into that sort of thing, you just want to have some relax and watch somebody else do it instead of you, come on over to TikTok tomorrow evening, and that's California Haunts on TikTok, okay? And check it out, because I'm going to be building a gingerbread house. Okay, my name is Charlotte. I forgot to do that, didn't I? And I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the proud owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means we can help you. Now, California is a big state, okay? And yeah, we are like Hawaii. We have beaches, we have surfers, that whole ball game going on. But we have a North Coast and a South Coast. So the North Coast is kind of cooler than the South Coast, but we do have that. So that's huge. All right, California can become its own state. It can break away from the Union and become its own country. Because that's how big it is. So we're talking coastline, we're talking mountains, we're talking high desert, low desert, we're talking a lot of rural areas, a lot of farming. So like I said, even though we have people in big cities or smaller cities, it may take us a couple days to get to you. In that case, we do have psychics on staff who are more than willing to phone you and talk to you about what may or not be going on in your place of business or home. And in most cases, they can calm the energy down until we can get out there. And it only takes us maybe 2-3 days to respond. Okay? That being said, where to find us? You can find us on Facebook under California Haunts, California Haunts Radio, California Haunts Ghostly Events. You can find us under Sacramento Seers, Seers. You can find it under my name. Okay, you can find us on Instagram under Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. You can find us again on TikTok at California Haunts on Meetup. I'm sorry, on Twitter. I do this every time. California Haunts on Twitter, Cal Haunts on Twitch, and the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team on meetup.com. So you can find us there as well. So yeah, I also have a blog that I have restarted. So you're going to be getting notices about my blog and all that. The other news I have today is that I am the California Haunts Radio website is going to be back up and running. We had some difficulties with it, and I've figured all that out and gotten over all that. So that's going to be up and running. And Nancy Matz and I have an event coming up on the 17th of this month for Solstice. We are offering readings, solstice readings. Solstice is out with the old and in with the new. Look to the future. She's going to do readings on whatever you want. If it's old news, if it's old stuff, that's great. If you want to see the future and what might be coming, or she'll do that too. Or maybe somebody, one of your relatives might pop in while she's doing the reading. That's that's cool too. So we're going to be doing that. That'll be Sunday, December 17th at 7 p.m. after I do the show, after I do my Sunday show, or I might go earlier with the Sunday show, but either way, it's after the Sunday show. So we're going to be doing that special, and that's a special reading of Solstice, and that's only going to be open to 10 people. So I will have a website. I will have it up at the meetup site. I'm also going to put it on the California Haunts Radio website, and I'll start getting that up probably late tonight, so you guys have access to it, or tomorrow sometime. Okay, so you guys have access to that page. All right. This being said, tonight's guest, I haven't talked to this lady in a long time, but we have been reading her books. Boy, have we been reading her books. I think we read a couple online, and we also this Christmas book that I'm reading with all the creepy stories in it. This came from her. This is the second year in a row that we're reading this book because I think it's such an excellent book. And I was really excited to get her back on. First time we had her on, we talked about the Peoria State Hospital. And since then, she has made another trip over there. And so she's got some extra info to tell us about that. So I'm going to bring her on. Her name is, excuse me, her name is Sylvia Shults. And I think you're going to like her. Here we go.
Charlotte, hi.
How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long time.
It has been. It's been a hot minute.
It's been a hot minute. Every time I think of you, I think of people being buried alive in the snow.
Well, you know what? Then I've done my job.
That's the one I don't forget. I mean, that's the one that sticks in my head. That whole book that you wrote, Krampus and all that. I think about the people that they buried in the box in the snow for like, what was it, 6-7 months? Wow.
The Vermont resurrections, yes.
That's crazy. Reanimating people. Oh my God. I can kind of understand it though. I can kind of understand it because back then when winter hit, there were no crops. Food got low, Why
they were doing what they could.
Why have extra mouths to feed?
Yeah, I learned about that. I learned about that when I was in grade school. There was a book that I read at my grandmother's house in grade school, and it had the Vermont resurrection stories in it, and it just blew my mind. It has stuck with me ever since.
Well, it stuck with me. Oh, one more thing I forgot to do. I got a couple donations last night, and I want to thank you all. Michelle Engel, thank you so much for your donation. And one of my good friends put in a nice donation last night, so I appreciate that. Every little bit helps to keep us on the air. We're still here 4 years later because of you guys. So thank you.
Yay,
all right, I'll shut up now. Get back to my good friend Sylvia. Now let's talk about that book really quick before we get into Peoria, because this book fascinates me. You heard that story when you were a kid. How did you find all these other stories? I mean, is the stuff you heard about, or did you have to do research, do newspapers and things like that to find this stuff? Or because there's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there. I read a lot of ghost story books, and I pick the best ones to retell for my books. I also get stories from other places too. I was visiting a friend in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and I took a ghost tour around Plymouth, and this was in June. Yeah. And the person who was leading the tour guide, hey, there we go. The tour guide started telling a story, and she said something about Christmas Eve, 1778. And I said, wait a second, did you say Christmas Eve? And she said, yes. And I said, go on with your story. So I collected that, and that's one of my all-time favorites. That's the wreck of the General Arnold, the brig General Arnold. That's a super, super fun, super gross story. That's one of my favorites from that story. That's one of my top.
So sad. Well, the one I find so sad, but it's so good, is the one about the soldier who comes to the cabin to visit his girlfriend. Yeah, he's a scout for that. Yeah. And he gets it. Yeah, that's really sad. That's a good one too. They're all good in there. Every one of those stories is
very melancholy. Yeah, very melancholy, but very, very cool.
Yes. I bet that kept you in the holiday moods, huh?
It did. Yeah. Anything I saw that happened in December or Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and when I was writing about the tragedies of Christmas, that was a really hard chapter to write. I left that till the last, and you'll get a kick out of this because you're a paranormal investigator just like I am.
Right.
Like I said, I left that section till last because I was writing about the Babs Switch school fire. I was writing about the disappearance of the Solder children. I was writing about Pearl Harbor, all these horrible things that happened in December. So I knew it was going to be really tough. So I said, I started off the weekend. I was like, all right, I'm going to power through this section of the book. And I wrote all day on Saturday. And by Saturday night, I had a pounding headache, and I had nightmares all night. I'm like, man, I can't do this. I gotta get this book finished and get it off to the publisher. So I went to my ghost hunting kit, and I got out my chunk of black tourmaline. And I had it on my desk as I was doing my research. And when I went to actually write the stuff, I had it in my left hand as I was writing stuff out with my right hand. And no nightmares, no headache. I was able to power through that section just fine. And it was all down to that black tourmaline, keeping away that negative energy.
I can't imagine that because, I worked with Anna Maria Manalo, who was just on the other night. And we were talking about that, how the last book she wrote, she had visitors, come in off that book just from being talking to the guy because she worked with a ghost hunter. I think that was the one she worked with a ghost hunter on that book, I think. I'm not positive, but one of those books she did, she had visitors follow her from wherever, that story was. So I can understand that.
Oh, wow.
I've done videos here where, just videos on just ghost hunts where everything goes wrong. The audio goes wrong, things go flying off the desk. And so I know I brought someone home that doesn't want to be known. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, there's energy out there, and sometimes we can bring it with us. Yeah.
Used to be fun. Anyway, I just want to let you know how much I enjoy that book.
Thank
I read
you.
it even when I'm not on the air because I love it so much.
I am just thrilled that you're reading it on the air. That's so great.
So let's talk about Peoria State Hospital a little bit. Can you tell everybody about that a little bit? The people that haven't heard that story or don't know about that hospital yet.
Yeah. So when I was working on my very first book of true ghost stories, people would come up to me, and they knew I was a writer, and I work at a library, have for 26 years. And they would say, well, what are you working on now? And I would say, well, I'm working on a book of true ghost stories. And they said, oh, have you heard about the Peoria State Hospital, an abandoned mental asylum in Bartonville, Illinois? And I said, oh boy, you had me at abandoned. And you know what? I started learning about it and learning about the ghost stories and learning about the history too. I've been a history buff all my life. I really believe that you can't understand the ghost stories of a place without knowing the history, because that's why we have stories, is this lived experience. And Charlotte, you say haunted mental asylum, and your mind goes all American Horror Story on you, and you assume that there was abuse. And it is my privilege and it is my joy to tell people this was not the case at the Peoria State Hospital. This was a place where the patients were treated like family. This was a place where they were cared for. Dr. Zeller was very adamant about caring for people. That was his bedrock philosophy. An asylum is a place where he wrote about this fine old word, asylum, which is a place where you come to get help. So I'm so proud to be able to share that history.
That is really good, because you're right. When people think about those places, they do think about like that movie, The Snake Pit. Different places like that. I mean, that's that comes to mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a joy to know that there was a place out there that was not like that was staffed and run by compassionate people who really wanted to help their fellow man.
So why do you think there's ghosts there then?
Oh, I know. I believe it. I know that there are ghosts there because of the good treatment they got during their life. I mean, these were people that may have been in other institutions. They may have been abused in other institutions. They may have been wandering around the streets of their hometown, misunderstood by their family, misunderstood by their friends, not cared for by anyone. And then they show up on the hilltop and they're escorted to their own room with their own bed with clean white sheets. And there are movies every Friday night and parties, dances every Saturday night. and there's a sense of community. You have breakfast and lunch in your cottage with your fellow patients, and then you have supper with everyone else in a big dining hall. There's a real sense of community there. So yeah, that's why the spirits are there, is because they found a home in life, and that sense of home has carried over after death.
Mhm.
And that's why they congregate there, is because that's a place where they felt safe, that they felt loved.
So it's kind of like the old adage, or ghost that I see there as a ghost hunter is, it's a place, it's essentially a place where they were comfortable and they enjoyed themselves, and so they want to keep staying there or going back there over and over.
Oh yeah, 1,000%.
Mhm. So you went back a second time because you wrote the first book, and you went back a
Yes,
second time.
yes. When I wrote the end on the first book, Fractured Spirits, people didn't stop having experiences.
Mhm.
So after a few years, I kept going back, and I kept talking with people, and people kept sharing their experiences with me, and I kept having my own experiences there. And I eventually had enough material for a second book, which is called Fractured Souls. So yeah, and this history of this place continues, and the historians are working every single day, and they keep sharing stories with me. And oh my gosh, I love that cover. I love that cover so hard.
That is a cool cover. That is really cool.
One of the historians put that cover together for me with the volunteers. The historian volunteers, they posed for the pictures, and yeah, I love that cover so much. Um,
That is really
but
cool.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I other people shared their stories with me, their experiences, and of course, I went back many, many times and had my own experiences there. The cool thing about Fractured Souls is that if there's a QR code in the back of the book, and if you hover your phone over that, you can. There's a chapter in the back of the book that is a walking tour of the hilltop. This
Wow.
this asylum, this whole hilltop, this was put together in the early 1900s, so it was before cars. So the hilltop was designed to be very, very walkable. There are
Mhm.
photographs of Dr. Zeller with 200 patients behind him, that he would lead them on walks all through this hilltop around these winding, beautiful roads. And he would take the male patients on walks. He would take the female patients on walks. And as they walked, he would listen to them. He would say, "What do you like about being here? What can we change? How can we help you? How can we make your life better?" And can
Mhm.
you imagine being a female patient in a mental asylum at the beginning of the 20th century? Women couldn't even vote at that time. And you
Mhm.
have the head of this institution asking you your opinion on your care. It's
Wow.
astounding. Yeah. So anyway, there's a chapter in the at the end of the book that is
Mhm.
a walking tour of the hilltop. I start at the original building, the first building that was built on the hilltop, which is the firehouse, and that still stands. So I start at the firehouse, I go down the street and around the corner, and I point out all the haunted hot spots and
Mhm.
tell a little bit about the history. And if you hover over this QR code, I also did a recording of this, so you can use it as a walking tour, you can use it as a driving tour, you can have me on your speakers telling you about this, or you can read the book and you can read my words as you're walking around. So it's really a full service book.
Now, originally, this hospital was huge because, from my understanding, from reading the history on the hospital, there's a lot of buildings missing from what was originally there, right? Because if my
Yes,
understanding
there were
right, they're
63
down.
buildings on
Right,
the
right.
hilltop. Yeah,
And what did those buildings do
yeah.
exactly? I mean, what did they?
At the buildings, Well, there were 4 hospitals. And the hospitals served not only the patients of the asylum, not only the asylum population, but they also served the underprivileged population of the entire area. Bloomington, or not Bloomington, Peoria, Pekin, as far away as Galesburg, Hannah City, um, Marquette Heights, all these places that had people that couldn't afford to go to the big hospitals in Peoria, they came to the Peoria State Hospital and got physical care as well as mental care, or instead of mental care. These hospitals were designed to care for everyone that needed it. Um, so there are 12 buildings left of those 63. And those, it wasn't that there were 63 buildings on the hilltop all at the same time. There were buildings that were put up and then outlived their usefulness, and were other building was put up. So there were a total of 63 buildings.
Okay.
And then when the asylum closed in 1973, some of those buildings were lost. Some of them were torn down because the stigma of mental illness was so great then that the city of Bartonville really tried to repurpose these buildings, but sometimes they simply weren't able to. And the state of Illinois had them torn down because either that they wanted the land for something else, or they just weren't able to repurpose the buildings. A lot of them did get repurposed, though. We do still have 12 buildings left. So some of those are, one of the men's cottages is now the Peoria State Hospital Museum, which is awesome. That's a fantastic museum. I actually write about that museum in my new book, Gone on Vacation, which is haunted zoos, museums, and amusement parks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Another one for me to get. Yeah, I got to get that one now too.
Oh, people have been devouring it. People have been emailing me and texting me to talk about their experience reading that, and that is the word that keeps coming up over and over. I devoured this book, which makes me so happy.
That's awesome. So tell me about, the ghosts that you have encountered at the hospital.
Oh boy. Well, one of my favorite spirits, one of the spirits that is very dear to my heart, is the spirit of a young man named Christopher Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in, he grew up in Indiana, and this is all things that have been told to me by a psychic medium over the years. Mm-hmm. He grew up in Indiana and he developed tuberculosis. And with that, he was sent to the tuberculosis hospital at the Peoria State Hospital. That's why he was there, not because he had mental issues, but because of his tuberculosis. And I met him in the basement of the Pollock Hospital, which is the former tuberculosis hospital. The land on which that hospital sits on the hilltop started off as a tent colony for the care of tuberculosis patients. That's the hospital that Chris would have known, because that started at the very beginning of the hospital's history in 1902 when it opened. TB was a scourge on the hilltop ever since the very day they opened. So they put up tents to provide the tuberculosis patients with fresh air. And Chris has told me through psychic mediums that he remembers being in these tent hospitals, and that it was very warm next to the stove in the wintertime, but if you were away from the stove, it was kind of cold, because they had these, the canvas sides of the tent rolled up so that the patients could get fresh air. So he remembers that. And I made a friend with him because he told us that the last year he remembers is 1906. So when I came in, the psychic medium said that Chris, I mentioned that there were parties every Saturday night, dances every Saturday night. he mentioned to us that he loved to dance in life.
Mhm.
And he could hear the dancing, the music from the other cottages, but he wasn't allowed to go and join these dances because he had tuberculosis, so he was in quarantine. So he was really upset about not being able to join the dances. So the next time I went to the Pollock Hospital, I recorded some ragtime music on my phone, figuring that was his era. That would be the music he was familiar with.
Mhm.
So I played that on my phone, and the medium who was with me facilitating these conversations, she started laughing, and she said, he's doing something with his hands on his knees back and forth. And I said, oh wait, he's doing the Charleston. Which I thought was just great. And then when the
That's awesome.
song ended, yeah, when the song ended, he said, no one's ever done that for me before.
Aw.
No one had brought music in for him to listen to. And it had been a century and more. It had been 120 years since he'd heard a ragtime tune. And I was the one who played that for him.
Mhm.
And the next time I came in, I went to the library where I work, and we have a DVD series of old-fashioned dances, and we had a
Mhm.
ragtime DVD with ragtime dances, and I taught myself a ragtime dance, and I offered to dance with him, and he absolutely loved that. He was so pleased
Wow.
that I had taken the time, and I brought this music in, and we danced together, and we had a really, really wonderful time. And Chris is very dear to my heart. When we were having one of our conversations through the psychic medium, I said, okay, Chris, now, if you're not allowed to tell me this, I understand. But I said, what is heaven like? And he said, well, when you get here, I'll be waiting for you. Just look for the tall kid with the dark brown hair, dark curly brown hair. And I thought to myself, my goodness, that is one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me. Just
Wow.
to know that there's someone waiting for me. I mean, I know my loved ones are waiting for me, but to have someone say to me through a medium, when you get here, I'll be waiting for you, was just
That's
so
awesome.
special.
That is awesome. Now, when you get a name, with the psychic medium out there, because obviously you're working close with the history department, are you able to verify that he was a patient there and all that through the history department?
Sometimes we, the historians have a book that we call the Book of the Dead. And that is a roster of the names of all the people that were, well, about 75% of the people that were buried on the hilltop. We
Mhm.
know which person is buried in which grave. The graves are mostly numbered, well, marked with numbers because of privacy concerns. But there were meticulous records kept. Now, Chris was actually sent home on the train when he passed away to be buried in his family plot somewhere in Indiana. I have not been able to find out where he is buried or who his people were. I mean, Peterson, you can spell the last name Peterson so many different ways. And I just have not, I did not have enough to go on. I do not know where he is buried, but boy, oh boy, would I love to find out and go visit his grave, actually. But there have been other spirits on the hilltop that we have been able to put names to.
Mhm.
Um, there, there is a spirit in the Pollock Hospital that we call, his nickname is Heavy Boots, because he really likes to run up on people and scare the paste out of them. That is his MO, is these heavy tromping footsteps coming at you down the hall. And people get really, really nervous when they hear these heavy footsteps approaching them in a dark hallway. I've got several stories of people who have been skunked by this, that they really honestly think that it's a big angry guy marching towards them in the hallway, and it turns out to be someone completely invisible. It's this spirit that we call heavy boots. And the historians looked at this particular haunting, and we realized that, first of all, this spirit likes to scare people. That's why he runs up on people with these heavy footsteps. And the other thing is, these incidents always happen late at night. So the historians started thinking about this, and they realized that the Pollock Hospital, along with the other 3 hospitals on the hilltop, was a working hospital, which meant that they were staffed 24/7 for the patient's care. This incident happened, they found an incident that was noted in the local papers. There were 2 patients there, young men, who were in the asylum for mental issues, and they both developed very mild cases of tuberculosis, so they were in the men's ward of the Pollock Hospital. This was in the mid-1950s. And there was one fellow that, I'm trying to remember their names offhand, I would have to look them up, but there was one fellow who, we'll call him James. He was in the hospital with this other fellow, we'll call him Bill. And James, for reasons known only to himself, like I said, both of these guys had mental health issues. James came up and picked up a broom and thwacked Bill across the back with it.
Wow.
Now, Bill took offense to this, as well he might. So he picked up the closest thing at hand, which was a floor polisher, and beat James to death with it. With a floor polisher.
Wow.
James was obviously not expecting this reaction. And here he is, dead, violently, very suddenly, which is a perfect recipe. So we have figured out that that's who Heavy Boots is this spirit, this young man who was beaten to death.
Wow.
Because of some rash action that he did to one of his fellow patients. So yes, sometimes we can put names to the spirits, which is the thing that fascinates me about history and hauntings, is that sometimes you can figure out who these people are.
Right. When you come in contact with someone like James, do you feel sorry for them? Because the situation they're in,
I do.
They're still there, right?
Yes. Well, I've done a lot of paranormal investigation all over the United States and in England too. And there are a lot of times that I do feel sympathy and compassion for these spirits. I feel very glad for the spirits at the Peoria State Hospital because I know that they're in a place that they feel safe.
Right.
I do have compassion for people, for spirits that are in places that were not so nice, like the orphanage in Gettysburg. The young spirits that are trapped there through absolutely no fault of their own. And those are the spirits that I really do feel sorry for. The plague victims in England, the little girl who died of the plague and is now attached to one of the dolls in the haunted museum, the Museum of Haunted Objects in Nottingham, England. I feel sorry. I feel compassion for those spirits. With the spirits at the Peoria State Hospital, I just mostly feel happy because they have a place that they can go, that they know that they're well.
Mhm. So is it just patients that are still roaming, or are there hospital staff still there? Okay, guys. Internet slow down. Here we go. Can you hear
But
me?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
When I'm doing my investigations, there are spirits that I do feel very sorry for, and I tell them that because everyone wants to hear that. Everyone wants to feel that, you know what, there's somebody out there that is compassionate towards you, even if they don't know you. They feel sorry for this predicament that you're in, and they're they're sorry for your pain, and I want them to know that. So
Are there still because obviously the patients are still there. What about the hospital staff? Do they still hang out there?
yes, the hospital staff does still hang out there. Um, there was a friend of mine who went to the hospital. This was right after lockdown, COVID lockdown,
Uh-huh.
and we decided to. I was there just shortly after lockdown myself, and
Right.
we both decided to focus our investigation and our questions on the fact that we were also living through a pandemic, and we were investigating a tuberculosis ward. So we
Uh-huh.
figured that the spirits would really, this would really resonate with them. And it did.
Uh-huh.
My friend James was recording, and he said something about, you're going to have to help us because we're going through a pandemic now, and
Uh-huh.
it's very much like what you went through, and we are in quarantine, and you need, if you can help us in any way, could you please
Uh-huh.
help us? And he got the EVP. We don't have any medicine.
Wow.
Yeah, it was truly astonishing that they're intelligent spirits, and they want to help, and they freely admit, we can't help you, we don't have any medicine right now. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating. um, I do speak about the Peoria State Hospital quite often, and
Uh-huh.
I have been told by people in the audience who are sensitive that there is a nurse who shows up every time I talk about the Peoria State Hospital, and is on the stage with me. And people who are sensitive, I always say this when I'm giving my talks, that if there are any sensitives in the audience, pay attention, because there's a nurse who likes to attend my talks, and she will show up. She will be on stage with me. So if you see her, holla and say hello.
That's interesting. I guess the employees liked working there too, or they wouldn't be there, or they're still helping the people that had been there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Dr. Zeller is still there. Dr. Zeller's still on the hilltop. I was giving a talk on the Peoria State Hospital to a high school history class,
Uh-huh.
and the haunts, the haunted house that is up there every year,
Uh-huh.
makes great use of teenage volunteers. And one of these young volunteers happened to be in this history class, and
Uh-huh.
he is sensitive, and he said, I was at the museum and I saw Dr. Zeller sitting in his chair at the museum. So Dr. Zeller is still there. And when they have their work days, he will stand off to the side. I mean, he was the superintendent. He was the guy in charge. He's not going to muck in and get his hands dirty and help out with these work parties. He's sort
Uh-huh.
of overseeing things. But there are people who have seen him. There are people that have felt his presence there, and he is still keeping watch over his hospital. He is still keeping watch over his patients and his staff and the volunteers these days. He's still there, and he's standoffish. He keeps himself apart, but he's still very much there. He's still very much a part of what's going on the hilltop.
Do you think it's because, he, well, we could say he loved his job so much helping people, or maybe he's still there to help people, or maybe he feels it's unfinished work?
I think he is there because he loved the place so much.
Hmm.
Um, there is, and I think he does still feel that he can still help the patients that are still hanging around there. There's a
Hmm.
wonderful story about Dr. Zeller when he retired. Um, when he retired, he was approached by Mr. Bowen, whom the Bowen building was later named for.
Hmm.
And Mr. Bowen was on the board of directors, and Dr. Zeller had a small cottage on the grounds,
Hmm.
and then that was reserved. It was the superintendent's cottage. So when he was superintendent, that's where he lived, in the superintendent's cottage. Now, the third floor of the Bowen building, which was the nurses' classrooms and later became the administration building, the third floor was apartments. Some of those apartments were for the use of people who were visiting their relatives from out of town, and some of those apartments were reserved for the doctors.
Hmm.
Now, Mr. Bowen approached Dr. Zeller with the proposition that Dr. Zeller and his wife Sophie would move into one of these apartments. And it took two tries, two conversations that Mr. Bowen had with Dr. Zeller. But in the second conversation, Zeller finally twigged to what Bowen was trying to tell him, and he said, "Wait, you want me to live there in one of the apartments? Do you want me to stay on the hilltop? You want me to stay here?" And Mr. Bowen said, "Yes, yes, we do. We love you. We want you here. We want you to stay on the hilltop, and we want you to stay with us instead
Hmm.
of moving to Peoria or something." And Dr. Zeller, this army man who had a spine of steel and a stiff upper lip, he was reduced to grateful tears at the thought that his staff and his patients still wanted him around, wanted his presence around, even though he had retired.
Hmm.
So yes, he loved that hilltop, and he is absolutely still there because he wants to be, and he feels welcome.
That is really cool. That,
Yeah.
like you say, you don't, like you say, you don't get that in those. You tend not to get that in those types of hospitals. You tend to get,
Right.
negativity. I mean,
Penhurst?
a
No.
couple of the ones I've done, you know,
Waverly? No.
no, definitely not Waverly.
No.
'Cause the couple of the ones I've done around California, I mean, it's the same thing, right? I mean, it's
Oh,
just
there you go. Yeah.
they just didn't have that, that type of love for a place like that to treat the patients decently.
Yeah.
What do you think? When you go in there, is there any power in there when you're ghost hunting at all, or are you just in there in the black?
I'm sorry, I didn't what
Well,
do you mean by that?
when you guys go into ghost hunt to check it out, is there power to the
Yeah.
building, or are you in
Oh,
there in the dark?
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's power in the buildings. Yeah. We the way that the way things used to be run, when
Hmm.
I was volunteering quite often, was that the lights in the building would be on, and the ghost hunters would be taken through, the tour would be taken through the entire building and stop at
Hmm.
several points. And
Hmm.
the historians and the volunteers would be there talking about some of the history.
Okay. Hang on,
Were
guys.
death ward in the
Right.
hospital, and then the actual ghost hunt proper would start, and then we would go lights out,
Hmm.
and the only lights on would be in the
Right. We're having some technical issues. I'm on Xfinity here, and the problem is everybody else in my neighborhood is on the same lines of Xfinity. And I know there's a lot of Republican debates and stuff going on right now, so I think it's causing issues. Not to mention, we've got some weather going on here, so you have to bear with us for this thing. Okay, I may have to flip in and flip out here to get the internet back on track. So just hang in there with us. Okay, I'm going to flip right now. I'm going to flip out, but just hang there. I'm going to get her back on. All right, I'll bring her back. Just hang on. Don't go anywhere anymore. Okay, I'm going to email her right now to get her back on real quick. I had to boot her out for a second. There she is. We're just trying to get this back, and yeah, okay.
Okay. I've moved to a different place in the room, so hopefully this will be better.
This too is my whole neighborhood is Xfinity, and when there's going on like now the Republican debates and all that, everybody and their brother is online here. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, I'm
I go
on
through that.
Xfinity too, so
Yeah.
well,
So
hopefully this will work better.
yeah. So like you say, you guys do go through in the dark then at this hospital.
Oh yeah. When we go down into the basement in particular, it's requested by the volunteers and the people in charge of the haunt that we use flashlights with a red filter on them,
Sure.
because especially in the basement, for some reason the spirits in the basement see a white light and they think it's, oh, go towards the light.
Oh yeah. Which makes sense.
The red light doesn't bother them, but people trying to send them away, send them into the light, and they don't like that, so they'll kind of lie low. But if you use a flashlight with a red filter, they're fine with that.
Now here's a question. Now most a lot of spirits would want to go to that white light. Is it because they're just too comfortable where they're at? They're having this good old time there. That's what they don't want to leave. You think?
I think that's part of it. I really do think that's part of it. And it seems to me, with all the stories that I've heard about the Peoria State Hospital, that there are some spirits there that have, they've kind of kept their mental infirmities on the other side. Now we think of, now I don't know. I'm sure I've been reincarnated several times, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, Xfinity's having issues tonight. Yeah.
They're healed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We like to think that all of our infirmities are healed, but there are some spirits that I've encountered that have not, that have kept their mental infirmities even in the afterlife. And
Oh,
I
wow.
think they're scared of going. They're terrified. They don't want to go. It's something unfamiliar. And we always say people are not allowed to try and cross spirits over at the Peoria State Hospital, because they're here because they're comfortable, because they feel safe, and who are we to tell them to go somewhere else? And the other thing is,
Okay, guys, just hang in there. It's Xfinity, so just hang in there. I may have to.
there we are.
There we go. Then we're back now. Xfinity, you should be drawn and quartered. Kidding. Give it a second. Probably a storm just came through. All right, guys, I'm going to back in. I'm going to back out, back in. So just don't move. Don't anybody move. So here we go. Let's try this again. It is Xfinity having the.
Hello. Now it's just me. Where did you go, Charlotte? Well,
Okay, hang on. Whoa, I lost her. All right. Here we go. Blank screen. Okay, it is Xfinity causing the issues because if she's got Xfinity, then yeah, Xfinity is probably overloaded right now. All right, we're back. What I was gonna add to all this, we don't have to keep moving around. It's Xfinity. I mean, that's just the way it is. And the later it
Yeah,
gets,
yeah.
because these debates are going on, the later it gets, the worse it's going to get. But I can understand that thing about them not
Oh,
wanting to cross over. Woodland Opera House situation is that the fireman that was killed in the fire is still there, but also the gentleman that started the fires is still there. So neither of them wants to cross over because the guy that started the fires is afraid to cross over, and the fireman, knowing that he's there, wants to make his afterlife miserable. So he's there chasing him around, so they don't cross over. Y'all gotta love Xfinity, you guys. Y'all gotta love Xfinity.
alrighty.
I paid my bill too, dang it.
You know what? I need to pay mine. Mine's not due yet. It's not due for another couple of days, but we are going to go down to the basement. You
Okay,
guys get to see my house behind me, but I'm going to where the router is.
okay. We're going on
So
a
maybe
trip,
that'll.
guys. Here we go. Now, what we use some walking music, like David Letterman used to have his dialing music. I some walking music.
And we're walking, and we're walking. All right, here we are.
Okay,
Okay,
so
continuing on.
like I said, I don't know if you heard that about the Woodland Opera House. What I
No,
said was
please tell
that
me again.
when you talk about them like being leery to cross over, I can understand that. Situation at the Woodland Opera House here is that the guy that set the fires, because there's always in these old towns always had fires. The
Oh
guy
yeah.
that set the fires is still there. He doesn't want to cross over because he's afraid of what he'll face. While the guy that was killed, the fireman that was killed by,
Mm.
this guy's fire, he won't cross over because he knows that guy's there. So he's there to torment that guy in his afterlife. So they don't cross over.
Oh boy! Now where is this?
In Woodland, California, the Woodland Opera House.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you got
oh
that
man,
going on.
yeah,
So that's totally understandable. When you
yeah.
talk to the people that work at that work there, the historians, you mentioned earlier that they have had experiences there as well. What types of experiences do they have?
Oh, well, one of them really stands out. There's a friend of mine, Jackie, who volunteers there quite often, and they were doing a work day, and they were having just a wonderful time with the volunteers, with the kids, and they were playing 80s music and just having a grand old time, and they were building the sets for the haunt and painting and just being creative and listening to music, and it was great. And they took a break and went to the doorway of the Pollock Hospital, and Jackie's standing in the doorway, smiling, having a good time, watching all the volunteers having fun, and all of a sudden she feels someone grab her butt. And
Wow.
she said, I felt 4 fingers and a thumb.
Wow.
They just reached out and grabbed a healthy handful of butt. So yes, people get touched.
I guess so. Apparently so. Whoa. That's what I call, when I take a psychic hit, and I mean, this is funny because when I take a psychic hit, I call it getting goosed by a ghost, but that's really getting goosed by a ghost.
Yes, Jackie can testify. Yes, they will reach out and touch you. Mostly it's people seeing things. They're what the his, one of the historians' mothers was volunteering, and she went past a room and realized that the lights were on, and she had been having trouble with the lights in that room, and the light had actually the wiring was weird, and she was having trouble with the lights coming on, and she said something about, well, can you turn the lights on for me? And the lights came on, and it was fine and that was a room that they had perennially had trouble with
Mm-hmm.
but the spirits liked Chris's mom so much that Christina's mom so much that they made the lights work for her. When I
Cool.
was volunteering, one of the times I was volunteering, I got there for an evening haunt, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
I was playing a part in one of the sketches. And it had been a long day and it wasn't over yet. And I wasn't feeling very sociable. So I got into costume and I just went down to where my little skit was supposed to take place, which is in the women's ward.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought a book with me. I'm sitting there reading, and all of a sudden the lights go out. And I, honest to gosh, thought that someone had just turned the lights out earlier. And I thought to myself, well, we haven't done the plays yet. We haven't done the tours yet. Why are they going lights out already? And I just raised my voice and I said, hey, I'm actually back here. So could you turn the lights back on, please? And the lights came back on. I'm like, hey,
Wow.
great. I didn't think anything of it. And then at the end of the evening, I told the tour guide, the girl in charge, I told her about that, and she started laughing hysterically. And she said, yes, they will turn the lights out on you. She said, we have been through the building turning the lights off at the end of the day, and we'll go out to our cars and take a look back at the building, and lo and behold, the lights in the women's ward are still on. And we know
Wow.
we've turned them off. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that'll happen.
That's interesting. And how does it compare, like, to when you guys are ghost hunting? I mean, are you hearing noises and stuff and doors slamming and things like that, or how do
Oh,
these ghosts approach you guys?
oh, absolutely. We hear doors slamming all the time. They're in the basement. I keep referencing the Pollock Hospital because that's the building I've had most experience with. That's the building I've been in most of the time.
Hmm.
There in the basement, there is a little electrical room off of the cold storage room, and it's got a big, heavy metal door. And that door will manifest the sound of it slamming, and it will reverberate through the entire building. And there was gosh, it wasn't ghost hunters, it was the Foreman brothers. It was paranormal, what do they call themselves now? It used to be the Foreman brothers. It used to be the Rocky Foreman and his brothers that were there, and they heard that door slam when no one was down in the basement. There was another wonderful story that I have. When the volunteers were in the Pollock Hospital, we can't get in there now because there's another group that has it. But
Hmm.
when the volunteers had that hospital to play in, they would do a lot of filming in there. And one of the things they filmed in there was a zombie movie. And they filmed a scene down in the basement, the creepy, spooky basement, and there was a zombie down there, and it was this step drag as the zombie was lurching across the floor. And the filmers, the camera crew went up. They went out of the basement. They came up the stairs to the basement, and no one was down in the basement, and they were making sure that no one was going to be left behind or anything. And they hollered down to make sure no one was down in the basement, and
Hmm.
from the basement they heard step
Wow.
drag, these footsteps going across the basement floor, and no one was down there.
Oh my! Wow.
That's what I adore about the Peoria State Hospital is these spirits are intelligent. They will respond to you. They will mimic what you're doing. They'll respond to questions. It's fantastic.
That makes me want to fly to Illinois, man. I really want to check this hospital out.
Do I'll be your native
Jeez.
guide. I'll show you around
That
the
would be
place.
fun. That would be fun. That would definitely be fun. So, do you find, and you talked about Chris, the ghost? Do you
Yeah.
find that the other ghosts recognize who you are when you were there?
Absolutely, yes. I've written a book about one of the patients there, a woman named Rhoda Derry. And
Uh-huh.
her story is so compelling and so amazing that I knew she needed her own book. Um, she went through a whole lot in her lifetime, um, all sorts of neglect and abuse. And she spent the last 2 years of her life at the Peoria State Hospital being cared for, being waited on hand and foot by caring nurses who knew her excruciating history. So she is one of our most beloved spirits on the hilltop,
Uh-huh.
and she is one of our more intelligent spirits. And this is what really fascinates me about Rhoda Derry in particular. Her ghost lore is that in life, she enjoyed chewing tobacco. And
Okay.
at the end of her life, she had spent so much time literally locked in a cage at another institution, not at the Peoria State Hospital, at a different
Uh-huh.
institution, that her hips atrophied and she could no longer walk. So she crawled around on the floor. And if she knew that you had tobacco, she would crab across the floor to you and tug on your pants leg and beg for some chewing tobacco.
Uh-huh.
So now her ghost lore is that if you are anywhere on the hilltop, and especially in front of her grave, and you smell chewing tobacco and you feel a tugging on your pants leg, that's Rhoda trying to let you know that she's around, trying to let you know that she's there.
Cool.
Now, there was a multi-group, multi-evening ghost hunt several years ago. There were three groups that worked together, and they had the Pollock Hospital for Friday night and Saturday night. And I was there both nights. And I told Rhoda's story several times on Friday night. And one of the mediums in one of the groups spent all day Saturday just stewing about this.
Huh.
She said, "Oh my gosh, this woman suffered so much in life. And this is so unfair that
Uh-huh.
even in the afterlife, she's reduced to crawling around on the floor." So
Wow.
she showed up at the Pollock Hospital for the second night of investigation on Saturday night. And she was standing in the big hallway of the Pollock. And she became aware, like I said, psychic medium.
Uh-huh.
And Lisa became aware that there was somebody on the floor next to her, and she realized that it was Rhoda. And
Wow.
she looked down, and Rhoda looked up at her, made eye contact, and then got to her knees and then stood to her full height. Rhoda was a tall girl. So this spirit stood to her full height, for her full beautiful height, and sort of gestured to herself as if to say, "See, I can stand. I'm whole on the other side. I'm not crawling around on the floor because I have to. I'm crawling around on the floor because I know that that's what people expect from my spirit." She
That is
knows that people expect to feel a tugging on their pants leg. She
right.
knows that people expect to smell chewing tobacco. She knows her own ghost lore, for heaven's sake. It's amazing. So, yeah, she's not reduced to crawling around on the floor. She just realizes that if you feel a tugging on your pants leg and you smell chewing tobacco, you know that that's Rhoda Derry trying to communicate with you. So that's what she does.
That is cool. Absolutely cool.
Yeah, it's so, so fun. And yeah, she knows me. She knows that I've written a book about her. I have been to her grave many, many times, sometimes with a psychic medium. And the medium has told me I came to Rhoda's grave with the medium to
Uh-huh.
tell Rhoda that her book was out and that they were thinking about doing some more things with the book. And the medium said, "Rhoda's giving you a great big hug right now." And
Oh,
unfortunately, I couldn't feel it. I wasn't aware of it, but the medium assured me she has your arms around her arms around you. She threw her arms around you in a great big hug because she is so grateful that you're telling her story. She absolutely knows.
that
So
is awesome.
that's something I'm very humbly proud of, that there's a spirit over there that knows that I'm working to bring their story to people.
Fantastic. So what's next for you?
Ooh, well, I'm having tons of fun promoting the new book, Gone on Vacation. And I recently got back from a 3-week ghost hunting trip to England and Scotland. So there are going to be several upcoming episodes of my Lights Out podcast that focus on my ghost hunting in England and in Scotland. What I'm working on right now is I've kind of expanded my wheelhouse into true crime.
Cool.
Grave Deeds and Dead Plots is true crime stories that have resulted in hauntings. The project I'm working on right now is straight true crime. I am working with a co-writer, which is something fun and interesting for me. This story is so huge and so complex. It's modern. It just happened last year. So, and it's straight true crime, nothing paranormal about it. But I'm really grateful to be working with a co-writer on this because I could not do this on my own, and he couldn't either. We're working together, and we're having a lot of fun, and it's really going to be worth it when it comes out. Do you remember last May in Alabama, there was a jailbreak? There was an assistant director of the jail who made a break for it with one of the prisoners, Vicky White and Casey White. That's who we're writing about.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah,
Wow.
the whole book about Vicky and Casey.
Fantastic.
So,
I'll have to get you on to talk about your new book too.
yeah,
Talk about that a little bit further down the line, January, February.
you
Well,
bet, you bet.
I want to thank you for coming on. How can people find you?
Okay, I am at sylviashults.wordpress.com, and the last name is Shults. And on the WordPress site, you can find um, episodes of Lights Out. There's a whole page dedicated to Lights Out podcasts. There's going to be another one posted very, very soon. And coming up from December 13th to December 24th, I'm going to be doing the 12 Nightmares of Christmas again.
Right
Some
on.
brand new stuff. I
Ooh.
collected a fantastic story when I was in England. I spent 3 weeks at our host's house. I traveled with a companion, another ghost hunter, and we spent 3 weeks at his, well, my friend's now, my friend's house too. And he had just tons of stuff, and he had some newspaper clippings from London newspapers that were ghost stories that happened in December. And I said, oh, I am going to use this for 12 Nightmares of Christmas this year. So there's a really fantastic London-based ghost story coming up on 12 Nightmares of Christmas this year, and 11 more wonderful things in store for you guys. So keep an eye out for
That is
that.
awesome.
sylviashults.wordpress.com.
That is awesome. Well, thank you. As always, it was wonderful. I really appreciate it. And again, I'd love to get you back on to talk about your latest book, maybe January, February sometime. And
Sounds great.
I hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you, Charlotte, and keep on reading. And I really appreciate, I applaud you sharing Spirits of Christmas, the stories in Spirits of Christmas with everyone. And I hope your audience enjoys them.
Oh, they love them. They love them. All right, ma'am.
Great.
Have a great one. I'll
Thanks,
be in touch.
Charlotte. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye bye. All right. Yeah, it's always fun to have her on. Love her books. She's got a lot of them. If you go over to her website, she's got just book after book after book after book that she's written. And some aren't even paranormal. So check it out. Go check out her website. Tomorrow night, medium Nancy Mass is back with us, and we're going to be talking about when you make a promise to those that are no longer with us. How does that work out? How's that communication go with them, and that sort of thing. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. In the meantime, I will give you some contact information for her. I have the 2 books that we talked about tonight listed on here. And then, like I said, I encourage you to go to her website to check out the rest of her books. She's got quite the library that she's written. So here we go. And yeah, the website is Sylvia Shults, shults.wordpress.com. And of course, Fractured Souls, that second book that she wrote. And of course, what we're reading every Sunday now, The Spirit of Christmas, The Dark Side of the Holidays. And like I said, she's got a lot more books sitting over there, including her new one, which we are going to get her on to talk about. And you can get those either from her site or from Amazon. Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great rest of your evening.